No, no buzz. A Just Bees book club. I read You Get What You Pay For by Morgan Parker. This book is out, but this is the arc that I read. And it's important to note that because I will be quoting from it sort of extensively because it's been a minute since I read this because I've been trapped here for a really long time, I think. I'm not really sure. Anyway, it's a collection of essays, sort of memoiristic. Um, sort of a collection of personal essays is like a way that people who communicate with each other regularly would say that. Um, that sort of like revolve around questions of blackness and femininity, of being a working poet, um, and it's good. It's a delight, honestly. I've been I've been reading really good books recently, which is cool. Um, there are certain things I'm going to try to pull out on by reading some passages, but sort of a very high level, yeah, is like there's questions about the specific intersection of like blackness and therapy. There's interrogations of uh, the slave ship is sort of like a huge recurring symbol, but it's not a symbol. That's a question of genealogy and history. There's a bunch of stuff about like being single in your mid going on late 30s. I believe this is the first sort of memoir-ish thing that I've ever read from a person who's almost exactly the same age as me, which I guess is just like a rite of passage on some level, of being like, oh, yeah, I'm old enough to theoretically be someone who would write a memoir that gets published. I'm not. Not because of the age thing, because of other things. Because I'm talking to only bees on YouTube, for instance. Um, but it's also just extremely funny. I'm on top of not being a sort of person who is super invested in personal essays or memoir, and I say that holistically. Uh, the 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 trend in the 2010s, the teens of the transpersonal essay was a you know it was just a general miss from me. Um, so to say even the ones that directly are relatable or whatever, I just simply did not care for. I'm unfortunately not really a poetry person, despite being very invested in language as such, and the work of language. Uh, Two different things, but both things that are very important to me. I just don't read poetry. I had my moment. I had my moment of reading extensively. I had my moment of attending readings extensively. I had my moment of unfortunately writing some and being involved in what turned out to be a truly reprehensible community. But shout outs to alt lit. Fuck you. Um, name names. Just ask me about it. Uh, so yeah, I basically was primed to be like, cool, all of these things are neat, and I don't particularly care about any of them because, yeah, again, Morgan Parker, author of There Are Things More Beautiful Than Beyonce, The Magical Negro, Other People's, oh, what is it called? Other People's Discomfort Keeps Me Up at Night, I want to say. Um, by all accounts that I've heard, like fantastic poetry collections. Um, I have literally watched someone read bits of other people's discomfort. Again, I'm not sure if I'm getting that right. I did not prepare to say any of these things. Like literally watch people read it and just like start laughing in like a cathartic, joyful way that was about the language and the content. Yeah, all to say I'm again prepared to not super fuck with this, but a B who has been on this program twice now, I think. Uh, oh yeah, I was getting it wrong. It's, it's other people's comfort keeps me up at night, which is a wildly different title. um, whoops, Jesus. But yeah, I felt like I came into this, or sorry, the other B who's been on here a couple times, recommended it to me and repeatedly was like, "Hey, I really think you'll like this. I really think you'll like this," and she was right. Um, I had a really good time with this book, despite being not in a general headspace, mostly sort of oriented toward this kind of writing or Parker's work in general. Unfortunately, she's just good at words, uh, and funny and incisive, and also like has a extremely cutting sense of what she's talking about. um, Unfortunately for me, the person who would prefer to be a hater, to make that clear. So yeah, I'm gonna read a handful of things. I don't think I have anything other like broadly to say other than yeah. Even if you don't think you like this book, you might like this book. What a sales pitch, bookseller. Welcome to the Just Bees Book Club. Yeah. Anyway, this is an ARC, so you know it's probably different in the published version, which I probably technically could have grabbed. Yeah, I'm gonna read from about 2 pages. First, this is from the essay in here, Everything is a Slave Ship. Think of the slave ship as a yacht, the inherent violence of leisure. A cruise ship where you almost forget you're paying to be there. A commercial cargo ship shuttling to sell. Shuttling to sell. We are in the money. We were the startup cash. The slave ship is the dollar bill framed above the register, the first profits. Walcott contends that the ghost of the slave ship, quote, is both an event and a first time, but importantly, it is also repetition. It teems with energy, the ramifications perpetuating and reverberating into the future of what Americans call the past, where our souls go and a story of us begins. The wrong to be corrected, the tightly tangled root ball of an instability, uncertainty. Why I feel unsafe or call myself inadequate or don't ask for what I need, the particular anxiety, the sunken panic of realizing you are at sea. The slave ship is the hyphen, the water, the wake, the boat, the origin, the unbecoming, the American economy, the myth, the moment, both end and beginning, as death always is, a site and a situation, a rupture, a transformation, a template. Because when it is not a slave ship, it is a plantation, which is to say there is always the cage of not identity, but a story of one. Right? But not of an identity, but a story of one. When I say this is violent, I mean ownership always is. When I say plantation, I mean the continued and echoed circumstance of ownership and entrapment. I have a physical memory, a sensory one. There is a memory of my body taking up space on this land. The memory of my unallowed personality, identifiable with no identity. The slave ship has become a place of mind. It's where we are held hostage from self-definition, where freedom of self is an aberration to the order of things. The order that is embedded in you and in the Western tradition, the order that is embedded in you and in the Western tradition, which you and we, in ways large and despicable and slight, uphold and worship even when it serves none of us, merely because we have not had a look at where these wrongs may have begun and why they might still reign over us. Maybe our story began when the dimensions of the boat were crafted, when the cells below decks were sketched. Maybe it started the moment the deal was made among trader and purchaser. Was it upon capture or pending completion of the transatlantic journey, conditional upon survival of the conditions of the boat? Was it the new names purely for inventory? Was it the auction block? Was it the shackle? The Christian baptism under White Jesus' watch? I arrived back at the slave ship by process of elimination, exhaustion, and experiment, having exhausted alternate beginnings. We never shared shores, languages, goddesses, but everybody was on the boat. I arrive at the boat by listening to how our stories leave their mouths and which ones were left out. I arrive seeking origins of a particularly sinister definition of us, specifically how much we're worth. It is imprecise, but it is a certain recognizable port, a point of reference and therefore maybe reverence. Certain as the water, specifically the Atlantic, all the way under it, and also the sky, witnessing, receiving our homegoers rising from underwater, the souls thrown overboard. I imagine them above us and below us even now. That's the boat, a passage through. If you think about the boat as a moment of birth, origin, or rupture, catalyst of hyphenation, it's death too. Leaving one world for another if we believe there are other worlds, which we must. The ship is a time of death, the stamped ending. Irreversible destruction of an identity, which is just to say humanness, Africanness, or citizenness. Loss of a kind of certainty and safety that no human should be able to dictate for another. And if you think of the boat as an imprecise location in approximately the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, as the Black American Big Bang, starting with the removal of the persons, the rebranding as goods, then slaves, then fugitives, then cooks, then soldiers, then coons, then hyphenated citizens, then diversity, then back to goods, then Hulk-like monsters to be put down, then black lives, then presidents, and back to dead black used to could have been a life. Used to could have been sane, been gentle, not no more, not by now. This is, I think, one of the most affecting passages I've read four or five times prior to reading it out loud, that I've read in a long time. I think it's what gave me Parker's sort of thesis, the line specifically about the what is it, the Jesus I arrived back at the slave ship by process of elimination, exhaustion, and experiment. The sort of focalizing thing in this book is the slave ship as a sort of genealogical origin for Black folks in the United States specifically, but also many other spaces where the slave trade, happened, where, where a distinction with difference turned into a distinction without a difference, because that is the sort of origin point of slave ancestry happens, and she talks really brilliantly throughout the book about her own, and it's mentioned in this passage, like her own bodily feelings of the slave ship, of her own memories of it, that I think tie together this entire collection in a way that made it not just a thing where I was like, oh yeah, she's it's a surprisingly funny memoir about being black. Or it's incisive and it has things to say about recent events. I think it's a I think it's one of the stronger uh, thesis statements I've ever heard. I laugh because it's a silly and maybe uh, unserious way to describe the seriousness of this question. And yeah, let me go to the second quote from the essay "We and the Money." Uh, yeah, this is the beginning of this essay. Until the first sort of like double line break. Yeah, we in the money. Part of the reason I subconsciously delay preparing and paying my taxes is how American currency began, which is also how I began. To call it blood money would be too simplistic. That's why I'd prefer my reparations in another economic form, because American money is so low down and dirty. Because it used to mean my body and my everything, down to the penny, and handing my own self back to me is not an apology nor an admission of guilt. It's a sick joke. You have to laugh. At present writing, my personal net worth is in the negative six figures. I wonder if there's a way to calculate if you're worth more dead than alive. I probably know the answer. In 1781, approximately 400 African people were in transit, their souls lining the belly of a slave ship named Zong, when the vessel became low on water. The traders had been overeager, the crew had been greedy, and they piled on almost 300 more slaves than they should have. People were dying, and slaves were dying too. Then they got lost far off course with only enough water for a few more days and much further to go. To lighten the load and properly ration the water, the crew tossed more than 130 African people out of the boat and drowned them. In 1781, hundreds of us caught in mid-Atlantic midair, still in space but already underwater, and opening and ending a state of mind. Yeah. I don't think I really need to add more incompetent thoughts to this at the moment. I think my diary entry has come to a conclusion. Other than to say, you know, you get what you pay for by Morgan Parker fucking rips. Thanks for not watching. Thanks for not watching.